What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Bush coming at you solo today to break down my Week 15 running back rankings tier list. We're going to be going through my top 36 rankings or so, breaking down usage, tiers, spreads, betting trends, and all that good stuff to help you guys set your running back lineups this week. It's playoff time. The first game of the fantasy playoffs kicked off last night. Hopefully you guys had George Kittle. Hopefully you guys had Brock Purdy and not Brandon Ayuk or Kenneth Walker or Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf, because those guys didn't have the greatest performances, but we'll help you guys turn that around with the rest of this video. So if you guys enjoyed at any point, you guys know the drill. Leave a like, comment any of your thoughts down below, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out our official show sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, promo code FSE at sign up and first deposit. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Okay, so here is the running back matchup chart. I will have tweeted this out later today as well. If you guys want to check it out in depth over on Twitter, some of the more difficult matchups for the week are to Austin Eckler, Kenneth Walker, we saw play last night, Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, Josh Jacobs, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, Saquon Barkley, etc. And then some of the easier matchups this week go to J.K. Dobbins, to the Chiefs running backs, to Miles Sanders, to the Rams running backs, to Christian McCaffrey, who we saw last night put up a big time performance, who I forgot to mention as a great performance in the intro. But we are going to break down the running back tier list. We're going to start with the will they play tier. And this is the guys that I don't really know how to rank right now because I don't know if they're going to play, if they're going to play to their full capacity. So these are the guys that have injury question marks for one reason or another. I'm recording this Friday morning right now. So before practice reports have come out for Friday, I will make any updates to it as I need to. And of course, stay tuned for our Saturday live stream. We're going to go live before the Saturday games. If you're a patron, you'll have our Saturday patron only live stream before that. And then Sunday morning, we'll make any updates that we need to make as well. So the first guy that we need to talk about is Ramondre Stevenson. He was in and out of Monday Night Football versus the Arizona Cardinals with an ankle injury. He did not practice Wednesday. I'd say we're trending towards him missing this week. He said to his press conference reporters in New England that he hopes that he can play because he is actually from Las Vegas and they're playing the Raiders in Las Vegas this week. He's in my rankings tentatively as my RB5 if he suits up and he's a full go. But obviously, if he's limited, I'll move him down. If he doesn't play, that obviously upgrades Damian Harris if he ends up playing, or if Damian Harris is also out, Kevin Harris and Pierre Strong. So a lot to work out with the Patriots backfield, kind of up in the air at this point in time. We'll know more Saturday and Sunday. So Najee Harris did not practice on Wednesday with a hip injury, should be monitored, but he is in danger of missing games pretty much ever since he suffered this injury on Monday Night Football versus the Indianapolis Colts. He's currently at RB24 in my rankings if he ends up playing, but I think he'll probably just be just fine. Dameon Pierce feared to have suffered a high ankle sprain. There was kind of some reports saying that he could miss 1 to 2 games. Maybe they'd shut him down for the season. I'd expect him to probably be out for this game. He's RB20 in my rankings if he ends up suiting up and he's a full go. But if he's out, then Rex Burkhead is probably a fine RB3 type of option for you. Jeff Wilson, the final guy in the will they play tier, left Sunday night's game against the Chargers with a hip injury and did not return. They play on Saturday, and he is DNP'd Tuesday and Wednesday, which is basically the Wednesday and Thursday practices on a normal Sunday game. And then he was a limited practice on Thursday, which is basically the Friday practice. So there's a chance that he plays. If he does, he's kind of like a back-end RB3. But to be honest with you, I probably expect him to be out and or very limited. So that upgrades a guy like Raheem Mostert. So let's start with the elite RB1 tiers. These are the guys that are in your lineup no matter what. Derrick Henry is the first guy that we have here. He is my RB1 on the week. 5.51 yards per carry is what the Los Angeles Chargers, his opponent this week, are allowing this year on the ground. They are 30th ranked defense against the run, according to PFF, and they're missing several key contributors at stopping the run, like Derwin James and Joey Bosa and guys like that. If Derrick Henry doesn't have a field day this week, I will be absolutely floored. He is my RB1 on the week. RB2 on the week for me is Christian McCaffrey. He played yesterday on Thursday Night Football, had over 20 PPR points. Hopefully, you guys have Christian McCaffrey on your team because he definitely came through for you RB3 for me on the week is Jonathan Taylor. The Indianapolis Colts are about 4.5-point underdogs to the Minnesota Vikings right now. The game is actually getting a little bit of steam, 48.5-point over under, 58% of the money on the over right now. The Vikings are the 19th ranked defense in adjusted fantasy points allowed to the running back position, and we know that they're terrible against the pass. So maybe, just maybe, the Colts are able to move the ball with some consistency on offense and get Michael Pittman involved, and that'll lead to more scoring opportunities for a guy like Jonathan Taylor, who has not seen nearly as many as he saw last year. Jonathan Taylor is a workhorse running back. He gets everything valuable for the team, which is why he's this high up for me, because they have a great matchup both against the run and against the pass, and he has opportunities to probably have a big, 2-touchdown type of game. And if you guys were able to get to your playoffs despite drafting Jonathan Taylor in the first round, who has not really been the guy that you wanted him to be first overall, he should be just fine for you in the playoff run, especially this week. So running back 4 for me is Austin Eckler. He is the single toughest matchup according to my matchup chart against the Tennessee Titans. But the bright side is that the Titans have allowed over 100 targets to the running back position this year. 107 targets, which is second most in the NFL right now. Over 500 yards receiving and 3 receiving touchdowns to running backs this season. So that is where Eckler thrives. He's going to have a tough time sledding on the ground, getting the ball, chunk plays and chunk runs on the ground, but he will be very valuable in the receiving game, which the Titans are susceptible to. So that closes out my elite tier of running backs. My next tier of running back ones, RB5, like I said, would be Ramondre Stevenson if I knew he's playing. But right now, RB5 for me is Alvin Kamara. The New Orleans Saints are 4-point favorites against the Atlanta Falcons at home. And Atlanta is awful against fantasy running backs. Alvin Kamara has not been good in recent weeks, but he's had a murderer's row type of schedule playing against teams like the Rams and the Buccaneers and the 49ers. They just have not played an easy schedule whatsoever. But I told you guys back in week 11, back in week 10, or whatever time I did the trade for these league-winning, running backs video, that Alvin Kamara has one of the easiest schedules throughout the fantasy football playoffs, and the Falcons are the first team on the docket for him. So his workload's pretty secure. He's like a 50% route participation plus type of running back, 70% or so of the snaps. He gets all the goal line carries when they're there, but they need to be able to move the ball on offense. And thankfully against the Falcons, they're going to be able to do that. Chris Olave is also probably in line for a great game as well. So definitely like Alvin Kamara this week. RB6 for me is Josh Jacobs. The Patriots are probably the most stingy run defense in the NFL. In adjusted fantasy points allowed to the running back position, they rank first. They are not an easy run defense whatsoever, but Josh Jacobs, thankfully, has 5 straight games with 28 plus opportunities. This is a bell cow workhorse running back. He's still in the top 6. Even in this brutal matchup, you still have to rank him this high because no running back right now is getting the type of volume that Josh Jacobs is getting. So he's still my RB6 despite the tough matchup. RB7 for me is Tony Pollard. The Cowboys are in a good spot this week against the Jacksonville Jaguars, but Tony Pollard is not the type of dude that I like ranking this high because he's only been getting about 15 to 20 touches per game, but he's facing the Jags defense this week who've allowed at least 27 points in 3 of their last 4 games, and especially a team like Dallas who can put up points, who's a good team. The Cowboys put the brakes to bad defenses, and the Jaguars definitely qualify as a bad defense. I think the Pollard game is going to be coming this week. I think he's going to have a monster game, break away a long touchdown. We know what Tony Pollard can do, so that is why he's ranked this high for me. RB8 for me on the week is Saquon Barkley. A little bit risky because Saquon Barkley only played 31% of the snaps last week, but Brian Daboll has already come out and said that he will be a full go with no limitations. Barkley has been practicing this week, so I'm not worried about the neck injury really whatsoever. It's not a good matchup, though, for Saquon Barkley against the Washington Commanders, who, when healthy, is one of the best run defenses in the league. They're third in the NFL right now in adjusted fantasy points allowed to the running back position, second in EPA per rush as a defense. But Saquon Barkley has one of the best 5 workloads in the NFL when he's on the field and healthy. So it's a similar situation to the Josh Jacobs thing with New England. It's a bad matchup, but he gets the work, assuming he's healthy, which it looks like he's going to be. So RB9 for me on the week is Miles Sanders, who is the college teammate of Saquon Barkley. He is just like Tony Pollard because the workload is not super impressive. You guys can see it on the screen. He's like a 55 to 65% snap share guy. He doesn't get an elite target share. He's like 6% target share this year. He doesn't get the long down and distance and 2-minute drill work, but the Eagles are just playing so well that Miles Sanders, and to his credit, is also playing very well. You have to rank the guy very high because you're a 9-point road favorite against the Chicago Bears, who have been one of the worst defenses in the league since trading Robert Quinn and Roquan Smith. And the over-under in this game is 48.5 points. The Eagles themselves are implied for nearly 30 points. I think this is an easy smash spot for Miles Sanders and the Eagles offense. So I have him all the way up here at RB9, despite the workload not being relatively even comparable to the guys that are around him. So RB10 for me on the week is Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon will not be efficient this week, most likely. They're playing against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Their run defense, even despite being without some pieces, is still a pretty solid run defense. You're expecting Joe Mixon to probably punch one or two into the end zone, which is definitely possible. I think they're going to be leading this game. I think as a Bucs fan, I think we're going to lose this game probably by a decent margin. They are 14th in my matchup chart, the Buccaneers defense right now. So they're not the death sentence for fantasy running backs that they used to be, but they still are a tougher running back matchup, relatively speaking. There's a good chance that the Bucs struggle yet again on offense to move the ball, to generate first downs, and the Bengals are going to dominate the time of possession, as has been the case for a lot of Buccaneers games this year. So I expect Joe Mixon to get a lot of carries, maybe not be that efficient, but probably punch one or two into the end zone. So he is my RB10 on the week. Nick Chubb, my RB11. He's had 3 down performances in his last 4. Not a lot of points expected in this game. Only a 38-point over-under. The under getting 84% of the money right now. He is not a must start right now, especially knowing that the Ravens have been very strong on defense since trading for Roquan Smith, kind of the inverse of the Bears situation. But you probably want him in your lineup, given what Chubb's weekly ceiling is, given that he can punch touchdowns in, given that he can break off long runs. The Ravens have allowed just 3.7 yards per carry this season, though, and 92 targets to running back. So if you're going to beat the Ravens using a running back, usually you want like an Austin Eckler type of running back to do so, and that's not the profile that we have for Nick Chubb. They're very good at stopping guys who don't catch passes like Nick Chubb, and just 7 rushing touchdowns allowed on the season as well. So not a great situation for Chubb, but he's in your lineup most likely if you got him. RB12 for me on the week was Kenneth Walker, who played last night. Only 11.9 PPR points, nearly scored a touchdown at the end of the game, but wasn't quite able to break away and get into the end zone. Definitely not ideal if you started Kenneth Walker, but it definitely could have been worse. I think, we saw his workload. We saw that he was healthy. They just had a terrible matchup against the San Francisco 49ers. That's really all it comes down to. RB13 for me in the next tier is the RB2s. You guys can see the names on the screen there. Dalvin Cook is my highest rated guy of this tier. He ranks 146th in the NFL right now in expected points added at the running back position, which is pretty bad, and 29th in production premium. Needless to say, he has not been efficient this year. He has not been the same guy that we've seen, in 2019 and 2020 when he was a top 5 running back in fantasy. But the Vikings are favorites in this game. The Colts are a dead squad, really. No playoff hopes, nothing to play for right now. We got to hope basically that Dalvin Cook punches in a bailout touchdown into the Mystic after rushing 14 carries for 43 yards and having 2 catches for 12 yards before that, because that's pretty much the story of Dalvin Cook's season right now. He either breaks off a long touchdown, punches in a touchdown on the goal line, and for the most part is inefficient every other time he touches the ball. That's pretty much what you're getting with Dalvin Cook, but it has led him to be like a top 15 running back in points per game this year. So he's definitely a guy you can throw into your lineup with the Vikings being favored in this game. RB14 for me is Aaron Jones. Green Bay is a 7-point favorite versus Los Angeles on Monday night. The under is catching a lot of steam, and it's already a low total at 39.5. But Aaron Jones, despite the tough matchup, the top 6 run defense that pretty much every metric would indicate are the Los Angeles Rams, he's actually been very good in tough matchups this year, ironically. His 4 best games really have come against Buffalo, Washington, Dallas, and New England. He's only really smashed one time against a bad defense, and that was the Chicago Bears back in week 1. So Aaron Jones is probably fine this week. He's a guy that I'm still starting as a top 15 running back. Another guy that's a top 15 running back for me, which is a wild thing to say at this point in the season, given this guy went undrafted in the NFL draft. Zonovan Knight, Bam Knight for the New York Jets. He has a great matchup this week against the Detroit Lions, and I really love how this game environment sets up for him, because not only does he have a decent matchup, the Jets passing game has a good matchup. They should be able to move the ball, and the Jets defense versus Jared Goff, who's a different quarterback under pressure. He's not the same Jared Goff that we've been seeing the last couple weeks. Bam Knight will have opportunities in this game. I think the Jets will win this game by a decent margin. He's averaging 5 yards per carry right now on the season. He's been extremely efficient, and I think he will keep that up. It's not a huge workload that he's getting. It's like a 50% snap share, 15 plus carry type of workload. But I do think that is enough for him to be efficient and find the end zone in this game against the Lions. RB16 for me is Raheem Mostert. Jeff Wilson, like I said, did not practice Tuesday, Wednesday, and was limited on Thursday, which for a Saturday game, like I said, is a Friday practice. Either way, in week 13, we saw Raheem Mostert get the majority of the snaps, get the majority of the work in this backfield. And in week 14, when Jeff Wilson left the game, again, he was the primary back that they used. The problem for Raheem Mostert and why he hasn't been very good the last couple of weeks is because the Dolphins only ran the ball 24 total times through all their running backs from weeks 13 through week 14. So 12 carries per game is not a very good total overall. I think in this game, given that we have weather conditions in Buffalo, they're probably going to stick to the run game a little bit more than they did in the previous two games, assuming they don't fall behind early, which is definitely possible. So I do like Raheem Mostert this week as my RB16, assuming Jeff Wilson is either out completely or limited in this one. So RB17 for me is Travis Etienne. He's getting the usage, plain and simple, which is why he's that high for me, even though he hasn't been very good. The touches haven't been pretty. Etienne isn't playing the greatest right now. He was dealing with an injury a couple weeks ago, but the Cowboys defense has actually been susceptible to the run. Some big performances allowed to the Packers running backs and a couple other teams, Montgomery and Herbert, were able to run all over them as well. You got to start this guy thinking that this usage will eventually result in him having big games. You can't get a 75 plus snap share guy and not put him in your lineup as at least a mid RB2, in my opinion, especially when he has, the talent that ETN has and the way that Trevor Lawrence has played lately. Maybe they'll able to put up some points against this Cowboys defense. RB18 for me is James Conner, who is in a different stratosphere in terms of usage right now. 3 of his last 4 games, he's had over 95% of the snaps. That means he's getting like Christian McCaffrey in Carolina type of usage. So obviously, terrible matchup. Denver Broncos with Colt McCoy as his starting quarterback. Not a great situation. The over-under in this game is 36 points, but James Conner is a top 20 running back, like plain and simple. And you could even argue to make him higher than this because that type of workload is not existent in today's NFL anymore. That was like Najee Harris rookie year, James Robinson rookie year, or Christian McCaffrey 2019 type of workload. 95% of the snaps is absolutely absurd. So James Conner needs to be in your lineup, as does David Montgomery if you guys have the spot for him. He's currently dealing with an illness right now, so hopefully he's ready for Sunday's game, as is Justin Fields, by the way. Both of these guys are dealing with, I would assume, the same illness, given that they're on the same team. Hopefully they're fine for Sunday's game, but his usage, David Montgomery's, is the reason you have to play him. He's consistently getting 15-plus carries, a couple targets per game, 75, 80% snap share guy. Even though it's a tough matchup against Philadelphia, they can be susceptible a little bit on the ground. And we know David Montgomery has pretty much a monopoly on the goal line as well. So if the Bears are even able to keep this game remotely close, then I think David Montgomery will be just fine for you. RB20 for me closing out this tier is J.K. Dobbins, which kind of fell from grace right into our laps for those of you guys that picked him up on waivers or had him stashed on your IR spots. He faces a defense with the Cleveland Browns this week who are 31st in adjusted fantasy points allowed to the running back position, 30th in run defense DVOA, and 29th in PFF run defense grade. They are the easiest matchup in the league this week, according to my matchup chart, are the Cleveland Browns. The other sneaky thing about J.K. Dobbins, too, is how good the Ravens have been as a defense since acquiring Roquan Smith, as I kind of touched on earlier. They also got guys like Kyle Hamilton and Marcus Williams, their 2 starting safeties, back into the lineup as well. I think what we're going to see is just an uber efficient running attack, probably a team that's playing keep away from Deshaun Watson and limiting him because he hasn't been playing very well on defense. So probably a lot of carries coming for J.K. Dobbins in this game. Last week, he saw 15 carries, had over 100 yards in just his first game back. So there's a good chance that we see him get a little bit more usage, a little bit more of a snap share than the 45% that he had last week. Maybe get some targets here and there. Hopefully Tyler Huntley soups up for this game, but it looks like he's probably going to be back because he did clear the concussion protocol as well. So good spot there for J.K. Dobbins. Moving on to the final tier that I'm going to go in depth with, and then I'll kind of breeze through the last tier. We have the RB2/3 type. So these are the guys that, for one reason or another, they're not going to be every week starters for you, whether it's their usage, their offense, their matchup, whatever the case is. But they are fine options for you if you need a flex option this week. RB21 of this tier, first guy that I'm going to talk about is Isaiah Pacheco. Before anybody says it, yes, I'm very much aware that they play the Texans this week, who are the 31st ranked matchup in my matchup chart. So it's a very easy spot for him. But he only averages 17 opportunities per game since taking over the starting job. So he's not a guy, even despite being the starter, quote unquote, for the Kansas City Chiefs, he's not getting like Kareem Hunt's old workload or even Clyde Edwards-Hilaire's old workload. We're talking about a guy getting like 40, 45% of the snaps, splitting a lot of, long down and distance and, targets and stuff. He barely gets any work from that degree. That usually goes to Jerick McKinnon. So I think even if the Chiefs are able to run the ball efficiently in this game, they probably will be able to, it's likely going to be split up among the Chiefs running backs, whether that's Pacheco and McKinnon or, Rojo or Melvin Gordon, whoever else gets involved. I don't think we're going to see a huge game out of Isaiah Pacheco because that's just not how they deploy their running backs right now. So if he has a big game, it's going to be as a result of a long run or a couple touchdowns or something like that. So RB22 for me is Ezekiel Elliott, and Zeke is kind of like inexpensive Dalvin Cook right now. They basically have the same stat line every single week. It's like 15 carries for like 55 yards and a touchdown or two. But Zeke plays in a bit better of an offense. Zeke is Somehow the Cowboys are only 4-point favorites in this game, which I think is a little bit wild. I would probably expect them to win this game by double digits. So I like Zeke in this game against the Jags. They're probably going to score a lot of points. They're probably going to win the game. 48-point over-under with the over catching 90% of the steam as well. So I'm expecting Ezekiel Elliott to, at the very least, get into the end zone in this game. Maybe not have a huge day, but at least be a back-end RB2 with a touchdown. So RB23 for me is Cordero Patterson. The Falcons, like I said, underdogs to the Saints this week. He has one major concern. I do have him probably higher than most people would. Because Desmond Ridder coming in is a legitimate concern. We don't exactly know how this offense is going to change, if it's going to stay the same. Are they going to deploy Ridder and Mariota the exact same way? Or are they going to drop back to pass more, use a little bit more of a traditional run game with Algier and with Cordero Patterson? I personally think they're going to let Ridder play more from the pocket and use CPAT more, which is why I like Cordero Patterson probably more this week than if Mariota was starting for this game. And the Saints are, exploitable. They're not a super good defense either. So I do like Cordero Patterson this week as a back-end RB2 as well, especially considering the question marks with the guys that I'm going to talk about in a second. So RB24 for me is Rachaad White. Rachaad White out-touched and out-snapped Leonard Fournette last week, but Leonard Fournette was entering the game with an injured foot. He was a limited participant in practice all week previously. So with Leonard Fournette, we're talking about a guy that's probably back to full strength this week, and the Bucs are probably going to split their running back touches 50-50 if I had to guess. So Rachaad White is my RB24, but again, we're not relying on an offense that was the old Tampa Bay Buccaneers where they're putting up points all the time. We're talking about like a middling to bad offense. So Rachaad White, even though he's like kind of the starter right now and he gets targets, he's nothing more than like a back-end RB2 for me. RB25 is DeAndre Swift. When the Lions have a great matchup, like when they played the Jags a couple weeks ago, you can play both Swift and Williams as top 20 running backs. But when they play the Jets, who are a very good defense, a very tough matchup, then they are more so like back-end high-end RB3s, back-end RB2 type of options. It would be one thing if this was an even split, 50-50, Swift-Williams. Swift gets the third down work, the targets, and Williams gets the early down work and the goal line work. But last week, we saw 35% of the snaps go to Swift. We saw 37% go to Jamal Williams, and then we saw 30% go to Justin Jackson. So this is like a three-way committee now, and it's really a huge headache right now. There's no reason that you absolutely have to throw DeAndre Swift or Jamal Williams into your lineup if you have better options like everybody that I've named to this point. If you have, like I said, Rachaad White or Cordero Patterson or Isaiah Pacheco or something, I would play them over the guys that I just mentioned, Swift and with Williams. RB26 for me is Brian Robinson. The Commanders are probably the opposite situation. I think they're using their running backs the way that the Lions should be using their running backs, where Brian Robinson gets all the early down work, Gibson gets the fun touches, he gets the stretch runs, and he gets the targets and all that kind of stuff. 31st in run defense DVOA are the New York Giants this week. This is also the second time that they've played them, and the Commanders were on bye this past week before the first time that they played them. So they had that entire bye week to reflect on how the first Giants game went that they ended up tying going into this next one. I like the Commanders to win this one and use the run game as their catalyst. Use Brian Robinson and Gibson as the way that they win this game. The question is, how do they split the workout? Who gets the touchdowns and all that kind of stuff? So for that reason, these guys are like back-end RB2, high-end RB3 types, but they're still good options in a good matchup. So RB27 for me is D'Onta Foreman. We know one thing about D'Onta Foreman, which is something that we can probably predict with certainty in this game, is that in close games, he gets a lot of carries. And this game, not only is it expected to be close, the Panthers are actually favored. They're a frisky enough team with Sam Darnold that Vegas believes that they're actually a better team than the Steelers, or at least a neutral team on a neutral field. So D'Onta Foreman, when you look back at his game logs, he has 4 games this year of over 20 carries, and all 4 were either Carolina Panthers wins or they were games where the Panthers only lost by 3 points to the Falcons on Thursday Night Football. That was the only other game that wasn't a Panthers win. So what we're looking at with D'Onta Foreman is a guy that gets carries when the team is ahead, and the team is favored. So I think that's probably a smart bet to make if you want to put him in your lineup, although it is a difficult matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers. RB28 for me is Jamal Williams. As I mentioned for Swift, the Jets are top 3rd in the league of any run defense metric that you want to look at. You're looking at an inefficient ground game for the Lions, which means that Williams will probably have to punch in a touchdown or 2 to be relevant. And that's not really a situation I want to bet on. It's something that's a good bet for him because he leads the league in touchdowns right now. But I don't think it's something that we can expect every single week, especially in a tough matchup. And then closing out this tier is RB29, Antonio Gibson. Like I said, he's a fine RB3 this week against a bad Giants defense. As I broke down with Brian Robinson, he's had at least 3 targets in every game except for 1 this year. And he gets somewhere between between 10 to 15 carries a game as well. So he's kind of like a similar like Isaiah Pacheco type of mold in terms of like a touch workload. Same goes with like Miles Sanders and like Bam Knight, except he plays for the Washington Commanders rather than like better offenses. So that's kind of what you're getting with Antonio Gibson. And then the final tier of running backs that I'm just going to speed through here real quick is the RB3. So Devin Singletary, Rex Burkhead, Jerick McKinnon, Leonard Fournette, Cam Akers, Latavius Murray, James Cook, and A.J. Dillon make up this tier. With Devin Singletary, and James Cook too, it's a bad weather game. They might run the ball more. Rex Burkhead, we were expecting Dameon Pierce to be out, but Dari will be involved, so I can't rank him much higher than this. Jerick McKinnon, like I said, Isaiah Pacheco, it's a great matchup for him. Jerick McKinnon's going to eat into that work. Leonard Fournette splitting touches with Rachaad White, but I prefer Rachaad White of the two. Cam Akers, tough matchup. From a passing perspective for the Los Angeles Rams, I don't think they're going to move the ball very well, but he does have an easier matchup on the ground, so maybe he can get going in this game. Latavius Murray, just a bad over-under, 36 points versus the Arizona Cardinals, who are a little bit worse against the pass than they are against the run, so I don't, love the game for Latavius Murray. We also don't know if Russell Wilson's going to start in this game as well. And then A.J. Dillon splitting a backfield with Aaron Jones as well. So that is the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed, if you feel like you got some value, if I helped you out with your start-sit decisions, leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you are new around here, and comment any of your thoughts down below as well. If you guys have start-sit questions, I will do my best to answer every single comment that we get on this video, as long as it relates to a running back start-sit question. I'll try to get to every comment period, but I will prioritize those because this is a running back video based on running back starts or sits. Again, we will be live Saturday morning on our Patreon only live stream. If you guys want to join on over there, patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange. We do a private live stream every Saturday afternoon. This week, it'll be at about 11 a.m. Eastern because there's games at 1 p.m. where we usually do it at 12. We're probably going to do a regular live stream open to the public on Saturday as well. And then, of course, we'll be live Sunday morning before the games as well. So if you guys are interested in that, check it out. Promo code FSC at underdogfantasy.com. Get some playoff best ball going, get some gauntlets going, all that good stuff. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.
Why you need the money?